A lot goes on behind the scenes in order to operate our elections, both locally, county-wide, and beyond, with set processes that connect your community to the overall results that you see on and after election night. Here for more insight onto those processes right here in Oakland County is our Oakland County Clerk, Lisa Brown. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Always glad to have you on to talk about election information, especially when it comes to the process. It's really important that the community understands what goes on behind the scenes in their local municipalities, but also at the county level to make sure that their voices are heard and that every vote is counted correctly. And so I want to start off with the situation we had in the city of Sylvan Lake. That city council meeting, typically pretty straightforward. They have 3 candidates. They're going to have 2 positions that were open in this particular election. But they had a situation where there were some clerical differences that led to a couple of write-in candidates having a very close matchup in the end, separated by under 15 votes. Give us some insight on how that process went and ultimately why there was a bit of a delay after election night on determining whether Mayor Jim Cowper would be reelected or former city council member Luke Kasser would be reelected to that board.
Well, with write-in candidates, so first of all, our equipment will pick up at the end of each race. There is at least one line, depending upon how many positions are available that are open, a line that's blank, that a space to put in a write-in candidate. And so that box needs to be filled in next to that blank and then a name put in. It takes time. We had write-in candidates all over the county. We had over 30,000 write-ins. Not all of them were valid, but we have to determine that. And when I say we, I kind of a royal week. The Board of Commissioners, the Board of Canvassers, which is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, go through. And I'm going to tell you, if you wrote yourself in, unless you were a certified candidate, you didn't actually get a vote. But people write in Mickey Mouse. Jared Goff was very popular this November. He got write-ins for all kinds of positions. But it takes time to go through all of those and sort those out from non-certified candidates to the certified write-in candidates. And then determining, if it's a misspelling, can the canvassers tell it was their intent to vote for this person or not? And all that takes time. And we, at the end of the canvass, when we're done with the canvass and can certify everything, that's when those names, those certified candidate names, show up on our website with how many votes they received.
Jared Goff, certified civilian quarterback, according to some national pundits. Not a certified write-in candidate, but the enthusiasm certainly there on election night for some of those evidently undecided voters. So ultimately what you're saying is when these write-in candidates that are certified and are approved by the county and through the election processes locally to get on the ballot and be valid candidates, it takes that little extra intricacy to essentially hand pick those votes and determine vote by vote, ballot by ballot who is decided in the case of something like Sylvan Lake.
Yeah, it's looking at each ballot that has that write-in. Is it a certified candidate in that race? Can we determine, again, the royal we, can it be determined who they were intending to write in if it's not a perfect spelling of a certified write-in candidate, and then allocating the votes thus after that.
And the best part about it is that it's a bipartisan process. As you said, Board of Canvassers, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They got to be able to come to that consensus on each and every one of those votes with those write-ins. So even more assurances there in the prettiest little city in the state of Michigan, with Jim Cowper being reelected to their city council. That officially announced earlier on this week. Lisa Brown is with us, the Clerk and Register of Deeds for Oakland County, on today's edition of the Splash Live. The process for those qualified write-in candidates very much mirrors what we have on the rest of the post-election process at the county level. On election night, those results we get are often labeled unofficial results. So why is that the case?
It's always going to say unofficial on election night, and it's going to remain unofficial until we finish the canvass. Listen, we now have 6 days for our military and overseas voters ballots to be received 6 days after Election Day, as long as it's postmarked by Election Day. So it's going to take us at least a week to certify any election. And then if you have an absentee ballot, you get a notice from your local clerk that you need to cure your signature. Your signature was missing from your absentee ballot, or it didn't match what's on file. You're going to hear you hear that you need to cure your signature. And so those, they get 3 days after election. So those come in after election day as well. So we add more votes as those ballots come in on that. Actually, it ends up being on the 7th day. So what you see on election night, it's almost everything, but it's not everything. And sometimes, there are long hours. There's mistakes that get made. Sometimes some ballots end up not being counted in the absentee voting counting board, or, so during the canvass, we're making sure that things balance and everything was counted. But sometimes our local clerks have to bring in their results or their ballots rather, from a precinct and have those retabulated. And so they're unofficial until we've gone through the entire canvass process, and then we sign off and certify, and then the results are official.
And there's what people may not understand when they see those results on election night, or they're wondering why there's a bit of a delay. All those processes that go through, both on a local level and then next on the county level, and then from there on to the state and federal level. It's all a step-by-step process, and good for us to get a better understanding of that as we are weeks removed from the election. But of course, those races all going to affect us for years to come. Lisa Brown is with us, the Oakland County Clerk and Register of Deeds, on today's edition of the Splash Live. I want to go back into this election season because you made an interesting point about absentee ballot voting, whether it's veterans and active military that are overseas and are submitting their votes within a certain time period, or
not veterans. Veterans, but military and overseas voters.
Yeah, I misspoke on that. Military overseas. Veterans can do their absentee ballots locally and in this area as well as anybody can. With that availability for no reason absentee voting and for early voting also, your office has taken extra steps to provide some help to local municipalities to ease that process a little bit, considering there's such a time period and an openness for people to make sure they get their voices heard. What's the response been like, especially in Greater West Bloomfield, from our local municipalities, and how helpful that's been in helping their local citizens get out the vote?
Yeah, I often say democracy is a team sport, and when early voting became the law in Michigan, and the option for the counties to contract with locals to run it for the locals, before it even passed, I said I would do that. And our local clerks already have so much on their plate, and what bothers me is you don't hear the hero-like stories of our local clerks and the steps they take to ensure that everybody gets access to the ballot that should. We had one of our local clerks from the Greater West Bloomfield area go to the Oakland County Jail because they couldn't get their absentee ballot because they were in jail, and they brought them a ballot at the jail. We had clerks who went to hospitals to deliver ballots to ensure that everybody has access to the ballot. People don't hear these stories. But our local clerks have a lot on their plates, and it just keeps adding up and adding up. And they've been wonderful ballot proposals, but it does cause a lot more work for every clerk, every election administrator, every level. And I think that our early voting has been working really well. It was an incredible turnout for November. Almost 20% of the turnout was by early voters, at our early voting location. So it was a learning process for us too, that, okay, people really are going to take advantage of this, at least in a November election. They weren't that heavily used in any of the other elections before this. But we're going to tweak our processes and everything like that, so it runs even smoother next go around. But it was great to see people utilize this new way to vote here in Michigan.
And understanding that there's so much that goes into that makes it easier to understand why this partnership with Oakland County and our local municipalities has such a wide-ranging impact, especially when we're expecting a more fuller turnout like we do for presidential elections every 4 years. Lisa Brown, the Oakland County Clerk and Register of Deeds, is with us on the Splash Live. Before we let you go, anything else that we should know about lessons learned from this election or things that voters should be aware of in the upcoming elections going forward?
I'm not sure that everyone still understands early voting or that they can't. So early voting is just like voting on election day. We now basically have 10 election days, except instead of it being at the precinct level, it's at a community level. And for the greater West Bloomfield area, it's at the West Bloomfield Library. And that you can bring your absentee ballot to an early voting site or your precinct on election day and put it through the tabulator yourself. I still get asked, how do I know that my ballot was counted? And, if you have concerns that, especially I'll say in August primaries, we see more spoiled ballots than any other election because you can only vote for one party's candidates. If you cross over, you've spoiled the entire partisan section of your ballot. So putting your ballot in a tabulator, whether again on election day or during early voting, you get that confirmation that your ballot has been tabulated because you did it yourself. So it's a great newer way to vote in Michigan. Not new in the United States. Other states have been doing it for years and years and years, but we finally have it here, and I just think it's a great option. I'm now hooked on early voting. I love it. It's great. I'm out running errands on the weekend. I run into the library and go vote and check that off my to-do list. So, and I want people to know that with the canvas that I talked about, this is open to the public. Anyone can come and observe. Our elections are so transparent. There's so many steps that people can come and observe all the steps that we take, the checks and balances that we have to ensure that our elections are accurate, secure, and fair, our public accuracy tests, the canvas. We'll be doing audits of the election results afterwards. There's just so many things that we do to make sure our results are correct and everything was done correctly, but also that there's so many ways for people to either participate, either by working or to just come observe, like I said, with the canvas or any other of the steps.
And we have so many of our local clerks too, whether it's Rhonda McClellan in Orchard Lake, Denise Dryden in Sylvan Lake, Tammy Neeb in Keiko Harbor, and Debbie Binder in West Bloomfield, always willing to answer those questions and give that information out to the residents of those local communities here in Greater West Bloomfield, as are you and your team over at the Oakland County Clerk's Office. Lisa, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.